There is so much pain and pleasure. Now, initially, this does not seem to be the case. The case seems to be that you just avoided discomfort in place of comfort. But the long term implications of this choice cannot be underestimated. The long term implications of a choice of that nature are truly inconceivable to comprehend before the fact. To how much that long term pain is so much greater and so much deeper than that short term pain you avoided. Now, pleasure, for the sake of pleasure, is a thing that one should never seek and should never give into because it's never worth it. You're giving up something special, something divine, something that your soul may be yearning for when you go the other way, when you go for pleasure instead of pain. And little do you know, which is the craziest part, paradoxically, in choosing pleasure over pain, you choose pain over pleasure. Because in the long run, as I said, more pain will be bestowed upon you. The long term pain of the unlived life, the long term discomfort with knowing that you never went for it because of how uncomfortable, how scared, how worried, how much pain you're going to have to deal with up front. And that's why we can't trust pleasure. And we need to realize that so often there's so much pain in pleasure. Now, some pleasurable acts are okay, but this is why I think you need to be so in tune and in depth with your internal compass and realize what's cope and what's truly true. Peace of mind, living in accordance with your nature, these are things that you can never give up or they'll haunt you forever. And everyone's different. Everybody is different. Living in accordance with your nature is something the Stoics talk about a lot. And it is something that is different for each and every person on this earth. And what makes one person happy and have a fulfilled life could be someone's idea of a hell. A job for one person is a dream job. That same job for another is prison. Say if you take a person like Elon Musk and you put him into a cushy 9 to 5 office salary position, do you think Elon Musk is going to be happy? Mr. Work all day, work all night, working on salary, Mr. Start from scratch as soon as he can, Mr. Do the impossible. You think a person like that is going to be happy, content with a simple 9 to 5 job? And then vice versa. There's people who are more than content with their 9 to 5 job, their weekends off, their steady schedule, their family life, and that's all they want. And if you gave them Elon Musk's life, they would be they'd be pissed. They'd be in an uproar. They'd say, "This is not what I wanted. I did not sign up to work, 100-hour work weeks and this and that and the other." But if you separate the both of them back to their original task, they're both happy. They're both doing what they believe is right for them. So you got to understand, that's the point I wanted to make, what living in accordance with your nature means to you. Because it's different to everybody. And why I said it's so paramount that we don't cope and be biased is because it's so easy to say, for instance, I want to start doing hard things. I heard about this cold shower thing. It seems pretty legit, the mental, the health benefits, the this, the that, the other. I'm going to start doing it. And then you maybe tell somebody about it. We'll get back to that. And then they say, what? Why? It's stupid. Like, why would you do that? Like, this, that, the other. Like, and then you're like, yeah, yeah, he's kind of right. And that's the side of your brain that doesn't want to deal with that discomfort. It wants pleasure. It wants that steamy, hot shower first thing in the morning. It doesn't want that cold, brutal, miserable shower. So you hear one person say, dude, what are you thinking? Like, why? And the side of your brain that doesn't want you to excel, doesn't want you to be the best version of yourself, doesn't want you to live in accordance with your nature, comes in and says, see, he thinks it's stupid. It is a pretty stupid idea. Like, I mean, it's not going to make that much of a difference in my life, this, cold shower thing. But you have to understand how priceless living in accordance with your nature, keeping your word, and peace of mind are. They are so priceless. And when you cope because another person, it's not in accordance with their nature, you ruined yourself. And that's why I don't think it's a good idea to talk about what you're doing. Just do it. Just do it. Because the chances that, if you're trying to be uncommon amongst uncommon people, the chance that the thing you're doing that you're going to go tell Joe Schmo about, he's going to think you're crazy. He's going to think you need a chill pill. And this is just his limitations reflecting back onto you. And then that's going to appeal to your lower self. That's going to appeal to your ego, to your mind that says, we don't got to do that shit. Let's just take it easy. And you don't want that. I remember one time I got into taking cold showers. And I don't know, I was like 2 weeks into it. And I was like, I was loving it. Like, it was great. Well, I hated it, but I loved it because I was living in accordance with my nature. The pleasure I was avoiding, I was enduring less pain. You got to understand that. Sometimes, most of the time, in avoiding pleasures and giving into the pain, you are receiving more pleasure and less pain. That is one of the great paradoxes of life. And once you can truly accept that and have the discipline to enact it day in and day out, your life will change. But I told my buddy, oh yeah, dude, I'm taking cold showers. It's been great. Hard thing right in the morning. He's like, what? Like, that's why are you doing that? That's stupid. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you know, you don't think it's cool? Like, or not cool, but you don't think it's a good idea? Like, and he's like, no, like, I don't know. He just like kind of threw it off and said it was, trivial, one way or the other, meaningless. And then that appealed to my ego. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm moving mountains or anything. Those hot showers, I do kind of miss those hot showers. It's like I'm not really missing. And I stopped. I stopped taking cold showers. And I started building the habit, and it's been hard for me to start back up ever since. And I think if I'd never mentioned it to him, and there's nothing wrong with him, he's one of my best friends. And that is not in accordance with his nature. That's what I needed to realize. And I also shouldn't have told him because I gave the opportunity for my ego to be filled. But I also gave the opportunity for my spirit to be filled. If he said, yo, dude, sweet, good job, keep it up, then my spirit would have been, see, it is a good idea. But when you're already rolling and you're already in the mud and you're already doing good, you don't need that boost. And you don't want to give your ego any footing to talk you out of doing the hard thing that you know is beneficial. So, moral of the story, for that, I believe, is just one, keep the hard things you're doing to yourself if you can. Not everyone's going to understand and agree with the fact that avoiding pleasure is more pleasurable and less painful than giving into pleasure. And the second is realizing if you do end up telling people, for whatever reason, and they start appealing to your ego, just remind yourself either one, that's not in accordance with their nature. Not everyone needs to be, a David Goggins. Not everyone needs to be a LeBron. Not everyone needs to be a Ryan Holiday. People don't need to be those people to be happy. But they need to be those people for them to be happy because that's living in accordance with their nature. So realize that this person just has a different nature than you. Or realize that deep down they're lying to themselves and that they're just avoiding the pain like you used to. And whichever one it is, it doesn't give a good reason for your ego to be filled up and to start giving into that pleasure. Because as I said, it is so often the case that pleasure is so painful. And paradoxically, pain is pleasurable, especially in the long run. If you give into, if you take the high road, if you make the hard decision up front instead of the easy decision, you can rest in the future. But if you make the easy decision now, you just push the hard decision down. And that hard decision can be anything from a real choice or from your mind eating you up from the inside out because of the unlived life you had the potential to live, but you lied to yourself. And you didn't allow yourself to avoid the pleasure and to embrace the discomfort. There's that saying, easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. And there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth. But you need to be in tune enough with yourself to understand what living in accordance with your nature is. And this isn't an easy task. This isn't something I believe you can just do in 5 minutes. It takes time. It takes constant reevaluation. It takes dedication. And it takes a mind that understands there's something in that mind that doesn't want it to realize its nature. There's a lower self that wants you to take the easy road. It doesn't want you to take the high road. It wants pleasure, comfort, and satisfaction in the moment. But it doesn't understand that all that leads to is dissatisfaction in the future. And it's a horrible way to live. It's a sad way to live. And from what I see nowadays, it's how most people do live. They believe there's pleasure in pleasure, but there isn't. There's so often just pain. And everyone's different. Be honest with yourself, but ask yourself, how many times did I give into that pleasure when I knew I shouldn't? When I knew the discomfort of avoiding it in the long run would be far more pleasurable and far less painful. But you just couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. And that's why it requires discipline, dedication, and hard work. I once had a conversation about what I would want if I had one wish. And I'll leave you with this message. And I wished for wisdom. And the guy I had the conversation with said, Well, that wouldn't be any fun. And I said, go on. He said, if you had wisdom, you'd never make a wrong choice ever again. You'd never mess up. You'd never, it wouldn't be fun anymore. Life would lose its edge. And I thought for a second, oh, yeah, that's a good point. Life wouldn't be fun anymore if you were truly wise. And then I realized that you'd still need the discipline to enact the wisdom that you have gained. Unapplied wisdom is just knowledge. And knowledge is only powerful if you act upon it. So you can have the wisdom and the knowledge that pleasure is far more painful than pain, and pain is far more pleasureful than pleasure. But if you don't have the discipline in the moment to choose when there's a fork in the road, the path that guarantees pain and avoid the path that guarantees pleasure, then it doesn't matter how wise, doesn't matter how much knowledge, doesn't matter what you know. At the end of the day, discipline is destiny. And without it, all the knowledge, all the wisdom, all the power, all the anything would mean nothing because you wouldn't be happy.